conference where he was on the defense the entire time because of the disaster week he had. And we're here with the Chris and Adam Show to break this all down for you. How you doing today, man?
I'm feeling good, feeling great, ready to punch back against all this nonsense.
Let's do it. This is episode 2 of the Chris and Adam Show. Episode 1 aired 2 days ago. The plan is to do these Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We come on, we talk about the news. We do a members-only show after. So if you want to grab a membership on my channel or Chris's channel, feel free to do that to see our members-only show after. You can visit adammockler.com and follow Chris on YouTube, Chris Mowry. We'll link him below, and follow Chris on Instagram. So let's start this. Visit us wherever. And I want to start here, Chris. This reads, Donald Trump's approval rating collapses with Gen Z. Now, I'm not sure how his approval rating was ever anywhere decent with Gen Z, but now we're at a point where he is way, way underwater. This reads, the latest YouGov poll conducted on June 26th to June 30th, so this was before the Epstein stuff, shows that Gen Z voters disliked him at a 23% rate, but now it's negative 41. So it went from negative 23 to negative 41. Why do you think this is?
Well, look, I'll say a couple things. We talked about this before the stream as well. I think that, number one, whether you voted for Trump or not, especially with Gen Z, you know, there's a pretty staunch gender divide, right? And I said now multiple times, shout out to the Gen Z women who played their part. I apologize, our demographic did not. But even if you did vote for Trump, you're at least realizing now that a lot of what he said has been a complete lie. And Gen Z looks for things like, you know, our generation, I would say, we've never seen America at peace. There's a guy, he wrote a great book. He went around the country, and for decades, he would go around and ask generations, when were you most proud to be an American? And what he found was Gen Z was the only generation that didn't have a clear answer. A lot of people would say, for example, in any generation, the end of World War II, the togetherness after 9/11, the fall of the Berlin Wall. Gen Z was the only one who, when he would ask that question, they'd look up at him kind of confused. Maybe at best they'd answer a sporting event, but they didn't. People need to understand that for our generation, we're ushered into a war on terror that obviously we didn't understand because we were born after 9/11. We watched 2 recessions. We watched political division explode. I lost my senior year of high school due to COVID. I watched January 6th, and now I'm here. And so all of these things, Trump promised kind of this radical change. Like, oh, you guys can't afford things like your parents could, so I'm going to bring you financial freedom. I'm going to get us all rich. Well, obviously, we've seen through 6 months, consumer sentiment is near an all-time low. Inflation is ticking up, and the Fed won't cut rates because of tariffs. We see, on all metrics, people do not feel confident. In fact, feel very unconfident about their economic futures. He said, especially to Gen Z young men, if you vote for me, no more wars. We're done with the endless wars. Your generation has been plagued by this. And what do we see? The world is a much unsafer place. There has been new war. He promised to end the Ukraine war within 24 hours. Didn't happen. The Middle East objectively is the most tense it's been in decades. So all of these things, not only does he not embody any of what Gen Z actually cares about or needs or wants, but he's lied about all of these promises if you're a young man and actually believed it.
The thing is, too, he made a bunch of campaign promises that are inherently contradictory. So his campaign promises, like you said, were to end all wars, end the corruption, release the Epstein files. But when he gets into office, that looks way different. He doesn't have the ability to negotiate an end to wars in the way that he wants because it's not that simple. He doesn't seem to understand that. When it comes to Gen Z, we haven't had, like you said, any moment to be proud of in recent history. During our most formative years, Donald Trump was the president of the United States. During our most formative years in middle school, let me think. If Trump got elected in 2016, that means I was 14 years old. I spent my most formative years, as you did in your teenage years, looking to Donald Trump as the president of the United States, which is absurd. I still remember the Obama era, but it's not as imprinted on me because I wasn't paying attention to politics. Even in the Obama era, we were in Afghanistan, we were in the Middle East. There has never been a point in our lives where we can, be proud of the country that we live in. I am proud, to be fair. I'm proud about a lot of things, but there's a lot of work to do. I think that I read this really interesting theory that essentially said the reason why Gen Zers really want to elect somebody like Zohran Mamdani or someone who can actually help us get our feet on the ground and buy a house is because we've never experienced the system working for us. So why would we like the capitalistic system if we've never experienced it working for us? I don't think we should tear everything down. I think a lot of what we currently have works and can be built upon. I think wealth redistribution is necessary. I think the richest of the rich need to be taxed way damn harder so that the people at the bottom can have social safety nets. But the point is, when the capitalist system we live in has failed so many people, then Gen Zers have no reason to feel motivated by it. And then we want to vote for someone who redistributes wealth, which is what we need.
You're 100% correct. And on that point, part of the reason that the Gen Z vote struggled this election was that, again, you and I care deeply about the Constitution, our democracy, our checks and balances. But again, if you're Gen Z and we're both agreeing that the system has never worked for you, a lot of those words don't really mean anything to you.
Yep.
If you've always been, frankly, fucked up by the system and they've always screwed you over, pardon my language, then why would you care if people are saying, oh, well, he's ushering in authoritarianism? A lot of Gen Zers say, well, dude, this whole democracy thing, none of this has worked for me ever.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's also like an interesting dynamic, even though you and I are obviously proud to be very supportive of our checks and balances in our Constitution.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a weird line where, like, overall, I'd like to say that I'm proud of America, but not the current state it's in. Obviously, the system has failed us in many ways, and that's part of the reason why Trump was so popular. People are looking for a change candidate. Right. The Democratic Party for a while failed to be the change party, and now I think we need to find someone that can excite people. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's part of the reason why Trump was able to hold on to so many young people. Very quickly, if you're just hopping into the stream, you are currently watching the Chris and Adam show. This will happen Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 p.m. Central, which is 1 p.m. Eastern, correct?
That's 3 p.m. Eastern.
3 p.m. Eastern, shit. Which is, then that's noon PST in California. So
Correct.
1 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you...
2 p.m. Central. Sorry, no, you're fine. 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon PST.
Yes.
Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you're in the chat right now, give us some blue hearts. Let us know how you're feeling, if you're feeling good. And
I'm doing liberal math over here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay, but again, if you want to tune in, make sure you drop a like. We're doing a members-only show after. It's going to be a fun, energetic show. Last time we hit, I think, 3,000 viewers. Let's go for like 3 or 4 this time, which was amazing. But let's dig into the news. So beyond Trump falling from... not even grace, just falling even deeper in a poll with Gen Z, I want to talk about his own cabinet kind of dog walking him. The title of this stream is going to be something to the effect of Trump's own cabinet is screwing him over, because it's true. Over and over and over, we have seen Trump get completely ran through by his own cabinet. So for example, Will Scharf, his secretary, is the dude that is always handing him those executive orders. And Trump always asks, what am I about to sign? Right. What is this? Could you imagine if Joe Biden on camera was being handed executive orders and he goes, what does this say? What am I about to sign?
The Fox News servers would overheat from 24/7 coverage. They'd be running it nonstop if Biden did something like that.
Fox News, like the viewers' heads would actually explode.
Yeah,
it would be like a mass casualty event because they'd all freak the hell out.
Yeah, right.
But the thing is, when it happens over here, Fox News doesn't care.
Right.
It's fucked up.
No, exactly. And again, like I feel like there's more examples in that of him getting run over by.
I was gonna say Pete Hegseth today. Or last night, Pete Hegseth apparently paused weapons sharing to Ukraine. This happened maybe yesterday morning. Then we quickly learned Trump didn't even know that was going to happen. So beyond Will Scharf handing him executive orders, beyond Pete Hegseth basically running I wouldn't say running the Department of Defense because like he's a puppet, but he made this decision unilaterally to shake up our allies in Europe without asking Trump.
Yeah.
Trump is also being dog-walked by Netanyahu on foreign policy. I think he's so lazy. Oh, how are we forgetting Stephen Miller is running this immigration
literally running
policy.
the White House, right.
Stephen Miller is running immigration policy. What have you thought about this state that Trump is trying to build of, it seems like an ICE surveillance state. If you look at the big ugly bill and the funding that goes towards ICE over the next 5 years, how do you read this surveillance state we're heading into?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, look, in the big beautiful bill, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the ICE will be the most funded. ICE will be the most funded agency in it's $170 billion a year.
Yeah.
There's some stat about how it's like going to be, funded more than pretty much every other department combined.
Every other department, most other like militaries somehow. Like the militaries of most countries aren't funded as much as ICE now.
Insanity. And yeah, like moving toward this very interesting dynamic of a surveillance state. I'm curious how it plays into also like Donald Trump obviously has spent so much time bleeding the line. Really not bleeding the line, just overstepping the line, where he's literally using the government for the first time ever to attack people who disagrees with him. He's signing executive orders against law firms that have previously represented Kamala Harris, the Kamala Harris campaign, or previously represented the DNC, or just signed executive orders against individuals because they previously investigated him. You add into this dynamic of we're basically going to fund ICE, this, and this huge agency, and it scares me because we've also seen with people like Abrego Garcia or multiple instances. I've talked a lot about a two-year-old girl, a U.S. citizen, who a Trump-appointed judge said she was clearly deported with no reasonable due process and in violation of a court order. He's done this with groups over and over and over again, and Abrego Garcia, where you're deporting people without due process. You're starting to try to find this loophole where the executive branch can play judge and jury. And you add into the fact that we're funding ICE so heavily, it's a scary time. I don't know. What do you think?
I firmly believe that Trump is going to be using this force as the Gestapo of his own in a few years, like in a few months. Well, it depends on how quickly the funding ramps up. Let's just say within 12 months, this will be a force that can back up Republicans and MAGA when we see scenarios pop up. Like, remember when the representative in California ran into the room and was asking a completely fair question, and they claimed that he was attacking. The thing is, if Trump has his own ICE sort of force, then when Senator Alex Padilla did that, it may not be as... It was already pretty violent, but it may get a lot worse. When Democratic politicians are showing up to these ICE centers, I can't remember the two New York politicians. One of them was Landers, I believe, the comptroller of New York. He showed up to an ICE detention facility. He was arrested. We are going to see ICE continue to overreach, and these extrajudicial ICE gangs will be going around pulling people out in the middle of the night. The scary thing with Abrego Garcia is that when you remove due process from one person ever, then you can remove due process from anybody. You can endlessly justify this. When you create a new class of people with no due process, anybody can be put in that class. So when Trump has his own force deporting people like Abrego Garcia, which they admitted was illegal. Right. And then Trump is out there floating the idea of deporting homegrowns, which is what he calls criminals that, were born in the United States, citizens. When he's floating all of these ideas, there's a very real chance that his new ICE force will be used for that. Because what else could it possibly use? Right. Like right now, the numbers may be a little bit off. Right now, ICE has $3.5 billion to detain people every year. Wow. What they're going to get is $45 billion over the course of the next 5 years, meaning that's about $10 billion a year. That's a 300% increase in funding. What else could it be?
Right. And listen, I'm going to go slightly on a sidetrack here. So cut me off. Cut me off. Feel free to cut me off. But I'm actually curious, in this concept of what the goal is of the administration, who's really running it. We see a lot of news reports about, people like Stephen Miller and all these other people basically knowing how to play Trump and fighting for some amount of power in that. Steve Bannon is obviously someone who was, I would argue, the key to Trump getting in office. He has been, in his first term, he was the mastermind behind Donald Trump's current media plan, this flood of misinformation. And it's often been that when Steve Bannon says something about what's coming, it happens because he's the mastermind behind a lot of these things. He's, talked about Trump running again in 2024 when everybody said, "Oh, that's impossible. His career's over." January 6th.
In 28.
And and so
in
that's
2024.
So that in 2024. But that was what I was going to ask in this concept of what does this turn into in 5 years or 10 years? Bannon has now been floating that he's quote absolutely going to run for a third term. There's no question. And so then you start to bleed into this idea of like, I'm curious, and I get asked this all the time these days, if ICE had, you have all this funding and he's building this essentially force and we're bleeding into authoritarianism. How far does this go? Do you believe Trump will run for a third term?
This is going to be controversial, but I personally don't think so. I think Steve Bannon is effing with us. And here's why. If you listen to Steve Bannon talk about his media strategy, it's always been to flood the zone and to say things that distract people at key times so we can't focus on the right things.
It's the attention economy.
It's the attention economy. So the second that the deportations started to go not Trump's way and they were like illegal and they were breaking news, the second the Epstein file thing breaks, Steve Bannon is always the first one out there going, Trump is going to run in 2028. You just wait.
Right,
and it's such... In my opinion, it is such clear baits. He is trying to rage bait us. Now, I just want to clarify, should we be very, very cautious about our election mechanism? Should we be putting a lot of pressure to have transparency and focusing? Absolutely, of course. We want transparency. I think that everybody should be voting in both the midterms and the 2028 election. A lot of people in chat, not this chat, but I've been in live streams before where people are like, I'm not voting, it's going to be rigged. And I say that is a very defeatist, terrible, short-sighted mindset. We should vote like our lives depend on it in 2026 and in 2028. And I don't think people should take Steve Bannon's word as grace. Right. I think he is a troll. He is a very, very smart, clever troll who knows how to play people. Right. It kind of reminds me of Trump. You know when he sends out those posts and he's like, Happy Memorial Day to everybody, including the radical left Democrats who hate America.
And everybody jumps on it.
Obviously, those posts are really annoying, but I think that that's him also trying to control the narrative. He's like, look over here.
You're 100% right. It's a really interesting take. I'd have to think more about that, but I appreciate your insight on that. And again, goes into this idea. We'll get back to the news here in a second, guys. Appreciate you being here. The attention economy, man. That's where we are. And Trump and all these people, the reason we are where we are, and it's so hard to balance because you have to talk about all the awful things Trump is doing. But again, this idea of like, look, I'm running for a third term. Look what I'm selling. Look what I'm doing. He knows that, like, even though we're all screaming about it, it's all eyes on Trump all the time. That's part of why Mom Donnie won the New York City election in the attention economy, where people are literally buying your attention. That is where the economy is going to be headed for the next 2 decades. Everybody was focused on him. And even if the press was negative, he won, right? And so it's like kind of the same concept with Trump, but it's very hard to balance. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and when it comes to the attention economy, Zoran's a great example. AOC is really good at this.
Yep.
Trump is unfortunately good at this. I think Gavin Newsom really started to get his wings with the attention economy when he figured out that if he punches back at Trump at the right time during these battles, then he can get all of the headlines. He's doing really well at that. Like when Gavin Newsom is doing these lawsuits, I'm not gonna lie, when Gavin Newsom sued Fox News, I'm not sure the end goal of that was to win the lawsuits in a fully fleshed out court case that drags on for 2 years. I'm pretty sure Newsom was just trying to stick the middle finger to them. Remember, he did the exact amount they lost to Dominion by.
Right.
So he was literally trying to stick the middle finger to them. When it comes to the attention economy, just to be self-promotional for 1 second, I think this podcast and what we do is a perfect example of the attention economy and how we're going to build into it. As we build this podcast and build a studio and bring people in, we're going to be doing more and more explosive shows that gather attention.
Yeah.
And we're not like Suits on CNN, which is the beauty of it. We're 2 young dudes who live in Chicago, work in Chicago, and we're into politics. So we're going to be relentlessly live streaming Monday, Wednesday, Friday to make sure that we are getting the attention that they're trying to pull. When Elon Musk is tweeting 100 times a day, which let's talk about in 1 second, we're there to respond and say, that's a lie, that's fake, that's racist, that's just like a Hitler quote.
Right.
He just posted a Hitler quote.
Right. And no, exactly. And again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday right now, I'm sure quickly we talked a little bit about
Monday,
this.
Tuesday, Wednesday,
Friday.
Start
doing 5 days a week.
How do you guys like that in chat? 5 days a week?
5 days a week. So it'd be every day, 2 p.m. Central. But also, again, to your point, like we're building this. This is still, it's only episode 2, but we're going to be doing so many different things. We're going to have people in studio. We're going to have a call. I've heard rumors of a call-in number where people can call into the show, either debate or talk about it, etc. So we'll be going out, in the street. Sometimes we'll have elected officials here. There's some really cool stuff coming up, and for our members only as well, some after show, which I just saw 2 people. Lisa, I think, just sent a membership to somebody.
Thank you so
much. And
much.
Megan, I think, subscribed. Megan, I really hope that was your name. I love you so much.
You guys are the best. Let's talk a little bit about the news again. Let's break down the Elon Musk drama that we saw yesterday. Then we'll talk a little bit more about Trump's disastrous press conference. So, Elon Musk, over the past few weeks, has been working on Grok. Have you seen this all?
Yes.
He's been rewiring Grok to be less, quote-unquote, woke, in his words. He wants Grok to be politically incorrect. Well, after he announces that they have officially reworked Grok, Grok turns into Hitler yesterday. Not even joking.
Yeah.
There was somebody named Sidney Steinberg who sent out a tweet. And Grok goes, Steinberg. And Grok starts to point out the pattern of Jewish last names. And then Grok is asked by some random user, who do you think should take care of this? And Grok goes, the only figure that I think could take care of this is Adolf Hitler himself, which is just wild. It was almost like Elon Musk was sitting there typing this.
It was actually like, I was sitting there when I woke up yesterday. I was a little under the weather. I was kind of in and out of sleep all day. And I woke up and I looked at my phone and like, first of all, just like this stunningly gross, especially with Twitter being the most popular platform on the planet. It's the most used social media. It's absolutely disgusting. But to your point, like my first thought was, can we put away this idea that Elon's like this awkward gesture he did was just an awkward gesture?
Yeah.
There's all this argument that Elon did this, awkward, my heart goes out to you gesture. And we were saying, and the ADL and other people were like, whoa, that was really dangerous. People said, oh, he's obviously not this person, not this person. He wouldn't promote anti-Semitic beliefs. And then he says, I'm rewiring Grok. And all of a sudden, Grok is talking about how Hitler's great. And it's really scary. Like, it's horrible.
We're seeing this spread a lot among not only our generation, but people of all generations, this weird form of Nazi resurgence. And it's like the Nick Fuentes type. But it's also just a bunch of people that are trying to draw these weird conspiracy theories that seeps into the mainstream. And then I have friends that I went to high school with. I haven't talked to them in like years, so I'll say like just ex-friends. And I can see what they're liking, and they're liking like Nick Fuentes real. So it's this really weird pipeline where normal dudes like us are slightly conservative, then get pulled down to this Nick Fuentes pipeline. What do you think about this pipeline that we've talked about before?
I think it's again partly to the concept of the attention economy. While everyone's focused looking one direction, a lot of stuff starts happening in the background. I think you've probably saw the news story, and I'm not as familiar with it, but maybe you are, but just very recently of this huge club around the country with all these neo-Nazis in it. Did you see this?
MAGA rallies? Is that what you're talking about?
No. This is like in the last 2 or 3 days. MAGA rallies. That was good. No, I'll pull this up in a second while you're speaking. But there's this huge like bombshell article where it turns out, kind of in secret, there's been essentially a members only club with like 27 different chapters.
Yeah.
And it's the people in this club include military officers, police officers, politicians, people from all around the country, and it's this like literal neo-Nazi like club that's exploded around the country that you can like join. I'd have to pull this article. Some people might be familiar with it, but yeah, it's scary, dude. This like pipeline it's insane.
There's also, regarding this neo-Nazi club,
I'm gonna try to pull it up while you speak.
yeah, find that. There was an article a few months ago about somebody that went undercover into militias. This dude went undercover and he found the very same thing, that there is a resurgence happening under Trump Part 2 of right-wing militias. And they're so interconnected that one of the militia leaders was like, let me text the sheriff and ask him.
Wow.
Let me text the sheriff and ask him what he thinks about this. So the neo-Nazi leaders had the sheriff's phone number, and this actually ties back into the ICE Gestapo. What if Donald Trump starts to put more underqualified people into ICE as an agent, and this funding is expanded to take these right-wing neo-Nazi militias and essentially turn them into the new ICE force? Have you seen those videos of ICE officers? And they're like, it's like some overweight dude with like a Marvel t-shirt on, which is fine, but then he's got a mask on and he's like grabbing immigrants. And it's like, I'm pretty sure that is some random right-wing guy who just saw some like post on Craigslist. I'm pretty sure that's not a trained cop. It's fine. Cops can be overweight or whatever. I know that happens. But when I see a dude who is clearly just a normal guy with like an ice vest on, it tells me that MAGA are signing up to be a part of this militia.
Oh no, 100%.
Insane.
And again, that's part of the scary. I was having this conversation with somebody else. The idea that we're seeing, especially in relation to the ICE force, and then in an attempt, we've also seen this oddly enough with abortion laws in the United States, where Texas has been trying, or has successfully won, but been trying to pass other abortion laws where essentially to skirt around the idea that they're unconstitutional, they are enforced by the civilian population. So like it's very interesting, and I've made some videos about it. So essentially, like there was an abortion law that Texas was trying to pass that was really strict and very clearly unconstitutional. Oh, it was that if somebody got an abortion and anyone else in their life didn't agree with it, that they could sue that person and seek either damages or seek to have like criminal penalties. And the thing is, this was very clearly unconstitutional, but the way they wrote it was the government isn't the enforcer of this law. The people are the enforcer of the law, so they can bring lawsuits. It's very fascinating, but in the same concept, it's like we see these like immigration task force that like you're a private civilian and you sign up and you just go. I mean, this sounds so awful. It's literally like we're going so far back in time, where you can capture undocumented people as a private citizen, bring them in, and you get paid. And so in that point, people have masks, they're grabbing people. They're not announcing that they're federal. If they are federal officers, they're not announcing that they're federal officers. If they're private citizens, they don't have to. So they're just grabbing people and being like, I'm going to arrest you. And it's like all these conservatives spent so long. I remember being like 15 and 16, screaming to people about the stand your ground laws.
Yeah.
You remember this was like a big political thing?
Yeah, like personally, yeah.
Yeah, so it was like in Texas, stand your ground. If somebody steps foot on your property, you're allowed to shoot and kill them. And that was like the thing. It was like 2A. I'm not letting the government step on my land. Now I'm seeing these videos of federal officers or whoever in masks, not telling people who they are, knocking at their door and arresting them. And it's like, where are the conservatives who are like, shoot that dude? Like it's insanity.
They're the party of personal liberty unless you're brown or unless you're a woman.
Right.
Or gay or liberal. The party of personal liberty only for MAGA, white MAGA supporters. Like they want like Derek Chauvin to be able to do things and nobody else here can.
It's insanity. No, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's interesting when you point out the not only the personal liberty, but the double standards at play when MAGA supporters are talking about these laws. It's like they want states to have all of their own autonomy and no federal, like they want the federal government and states to be separate, except when it comes to very specific things that Trump wants to overreach on. Like they want the National Guard to go into states, and then when states do have their own sovereignty to decide, which sometimes could be better than other times, the states turn it into this weird, regressive, backward shit. Like you're from Georgia.
Yep.
And some woman, I don't want to get the story wrong, but she was essentially almost dead, but they kept her body on life support.
Yep.
When this is happening in Georgia, and then like 2 states over, it's way different. It's insane. Very quickly, Hunter, thank you so much. And the new membership I just saw 1 second ago, Sydney, thank you so much. But yeah, tell me the Georgia.
Yeah, and Hunter, we're going to read that in a second. Appreciate that a lot. Yeah, I've made multiple videos on this. And I actually raised some money for we did some work on TikTok Live, raising some money for Adriana's family for a lot of the costs associated with this. But essentially, Adriana was a young woman in Georgia who is a nurse. She had a child. She was pregnant with her second child. One day, she's getting these really bad migraines, so she goes to the ER. In Georgia, they prescribe her some pain meds, say, you're fine, and send her on her way. The next morning, her boyfriend wakes up. He looks over. She's essentially unconscious, gasping for air in her sleep. Like something is very wrong. So he quickly rushes her to the hospital. She gets to the hospital. They do an MRI, and she has essentially multiple bleeds in her brain. And unfortunately, she was legally declared brain dead. She didn't make it. And what happened was she was, at this point, roughly 8 to 9 weeks pregnant. Now, in any other state, normally, what would happen is the family essentially gets to decide what happens next, whether it's the mother or the boyfriend, whoever comes, what comes next for the pregnancy. But there's this gray area in the abortion law where the doctors actually told them, you don't have a choice. We're going to have, Georgia has a 6-week abortion ban. You don't have a choice. We're at a lot of legal risk here. So we are going to keep Adriana alive on life support until essentially she can carry the baby to term, which would be at 32 weeks. And remember, this all happened at 8 or 9 weeks. And the family said, maybe this is the decision we would have made, but we actually don't have a choice.
It's their decision.
They don't have a choice. And so they ended up having to pay. How obviously many people know the situation with healthcare in this country. They had to pay for all the bills to keep her in the hospital. Then they found out that the child had fluid around his brain, and they didn't know the type of quality of life that he would have. It was absolutely tragic. And a lot of people were talking about this is what happened. Like these very vague abortion laws, are ruining people's lives in so many ways. Really quickly, sorry, before you go back. And Adriana actually very recently, just in the last 2 weeks, they took her off life support. She passed away. The child was delivered via C-section, and we're waiting on news about how he's doing. But it's stories like that you bring up that are just absolutely tragic.
Yeah, that's incredibly sad. I didn't know it in that much detail, but that's heartbreaking. And to loop back, the point that we were trying to make is when you create this patchwork of different laws in different states, when you remove the federal government from being able to at least have a federal standard, then you leave red states up to act like they're acting on their most vile urges.
Yeah.
And we were looping that back around to militias being mobilized in states, like ICE militias being mobilized, or citizens suing their either family members or friends for getting an abortion. Red states are then left up to their own devices, and it's sick. I'm sorry to all the red state fans out there.
Yeah. And again, I think this actually relates to, that was all very well said. It relates to Hunter's question, which we will talk about in the same vein. Couldn't find the specific article, but this is very similar, which is, and this was released, a day ago, kind of in the same concept, where we found that active clubs, meaning essentially neo-Nazi groups, have the rate of these groups increased substantially by 60+% just from 2022 to 2023, and also found globally the number of quote active clubs increased increased to 187 chapters operating across 27 countries. A lot of young people, especially in the United States, joining. So it's very scary.
Ooh.
I think all of this goes to
These are right-wing militias we're talking about, right?
yeah, essentially, it kind of in the same vein where these are essentially just neo-Nazi member-only clubs. A lot of in the United States are kind of secretive, underground, but they represent potential military, police officers, politicians, anyone. But it comes to the same idea of when these very right-wing people need something done, or ICE is getting all this funding, that they're going to end up turning into potential right-wing militias.
That's something we got to push back on too. On this show, we should make an intentional effort to push back against the growing resurgence of right-wing militias across the entire country.
Absolutely.
It is a renaissance, I saw someone describe it as. It is a renaissance of right-wing militias, meaning they're having a restructuring of how popular it is.
Yeah.
And now we're going to see it actually, no, we're not going to see it everywhere because it's hidden. It's people that are sheriffs or police officers. There was even this one thread about the dude who snuck into the militia where he was talking to some lady, and the lady said she's been putting dead animals in her liberal neighbor's lawn for months. She's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure my neighbor is a part of the deep state, so I just put dead animals in her lawn. And I remember the journalist then had to email the neighbor. He found the neighbor, tracked her down, and said, hey, just so you know, watch your back. I'm not going to tell you who I am, but your neighbor is a little bit crazy. This is a whole crazy story.
Wow.
In this story, they were saying that, yeah, there is a resurgence happening. There's a lot of young people, but they're all just kind of losers. Have you ever seen the people who claim to be white supremacists? They are all the biggest losers possible.
Yeah.
And when it comes to again, young people, we got to be pushing back. Maybe we eventually have some people that are on the fence on this podcast, and we try to reel them in. We say, listen, these militias are bad. Do not be doing this stuff.
I 100% agree.
Hunter Young, thank you for the donation. That means more than you know. He said, with midterms approaching, I worry MAGA will restrict poll access or observers, then justify it by claiming Dems did it first. How likely is this, and how do we proactively counter that narrative?
That's a really good question.
It's really good, and I think that is something that is likely to happen. MAGA restricting poll access, I don't know if it's going to happen in a top-down manner, but I could see Trump, this would be a top-down manner, I could see Trump tweeting something like, we need to make sure we're watching our polls. We need to keep our elections safe. We need to make sure we're out there showing up and holding Democrats accountable for what they did to us. And without Trump saying it, he's saying it. He's saying, mobilize, stand back and stand by, which is what he said last time at the debate with Joe Biden 5 or so years ago. I think there's a very real chance that he tries to mobilize people to watch the polls, but I also think we can make sure it's too big to rig, too big to suppress turnout.
That's right. Take the saying. Well, to Hunter's point again, great question. I also think a lot of the way we counter this, and as somebody who's done a lot of local work in Georgia, is Democrats have already kind of quietly been gearing up with quite a lot of lawyers around the country, judges around the country, not active judges, but people essentially, I'm trying to encapsulate the judicial branch. They've been gearing up quite the network of individuals from all different backgrounds, especially voter protection backgrounds, to make sure that in 2026, the right things are being done. And I think that it ends up being with things like, claiming Dems did it first, that we absolutely have a media barrage on things like this. I'm going to weirdly shout out, there's a current representative in Georgia who was the director of voter protection in Georgia for Biden in 2020, Syra Draper, who's a young representative and someone who it kind of encapsulates this idea of just she obsessing when it's time that everybody's vote is being counted, that votes are not being suppressed. And when things are going wrong, when we're having people, these poll watchers or laws that are not, shouldn't be enacted like we have in Georgia, where we're taking away people's ability to vote, you are just, you are everywhere. You literally cannot escape whether it's Cyrus Draper's face, my face, your face, a Democrat's face, screaming and saying, look at what is going on. This is not acceptable. This is not the country we live in. And I think a lot of the answer becomes the media barrage, similar to what we've done on immigration. Donald Trump's underwater on immigration and already has slowly signaled starting, I know this is small, but starting to say, oh, well, maybe we should protect, or I'm going to sign an executive order protecting undocumented people in the hospitality industry and the farming industry. That may seem small, but that's a very intense shift for Trump from, saying, I'm going to arrest everybody, mass deportations, to that. And it's because he's underwater and on immigration. He's getting absolutely killed. And so, again, it's this media barrage that's going to be key for 2026 and making sure people's votes are counted.
I also think it comes down to people on an individual level. So if you've heard Larry Krasner, who's the Philadelphia district attorney, I'm pretty sure, he was before the election saying if there is any iota of fraud, we are going to come down so incredibly hard that this person's going to be in jail for life or whatever. He was drawing the line right there. So I do think it comes down to what you were saying. A coalition of people, from judges to activists to Supreme Courts staffers to everybody at every single level, making sure that there is no fraud unseen.
Yeah, it's the fight of our lives. And my hope is that people will recognize what has to happen,
Yeah. When it comes to 2026 in the midterms, what are you looking at? I've read a lot of articles saying the House, very likely in our favor. The Senate is an uphill battle simply due to the map that we're looking at.
Yep.
Certain elections are happening. In certain states, there aren't elections happening that we need. How do you view the congressional map in 2026?
Well, I agree with your analysis. I think we retake the House. I think that the Senate will be really close, but there's some really key big wins. John Ossoff in Georgia. North Carolina Senate race, obviously, all of a sudden just opened up for Democrats. But I also put an asterisk there that I'm kind of concerned in some ways. I don't want to sleepwalk into a 2026 either not. I want an absolute overperformance, a blowout. And I kind of get the feeling sometimes with Democrats, elected officials, or people, on MSNBC, CNN, et cetera, great at what they do, but everyone's saying, oh, yeah, we're absolutely retaking the House. I'm let's not sleepwalk into a potential loss here. I know that Trump is underwater. I know that we're seeing this all of a sudden surge of even some of the biggest conservative pundits saying Trump conned us, Trump lied to us, all these promises he's broken. I just want to make sure we keep our foot on the gas. And Democrats, it's not just, hey, look, Trump's terrible, vote for us. It's also, this is what our party's turning into. This is what we're running on. This is the new Democrat Party. And we have, clear leaders in place. And then absolutely, I think with that in mind and our foot on the gas, I think there's a chance we take both.
Yeah, there is absolutely.
I think there's a chance we take both.
Especially if you look at the momentum from the No Kings protests.
Oh,
Imagine if we can keep that ball rolling. I think those should be happening quarterly, every 3 months. I think monthly would be a bit too much for people to take a day off.
Yeah.
But every 3 months or so, every 4 months, we do a No Kings protest. We show how many people are fully against executive overreach. I think that's powerful. I think Trump will be scared. And as we see him turn on all of his core promises from No New Wars, his core promises about releasing the Epstein files, he said he was going to lower the deficit, have Elon Musk helping him out. All of these things combined, there's no Elon, there's a bigger deficit, there's more wars, more of all of the bad things. He is the swamp. He is the deep states. And we just want to show voters that we can turn out and change the tides. And then Trump gets impeached, and then we're all... Yeah.
It's been... No, I mean, in terms of I have to say, Democrats are probably the most vindicated people on the face of the planet in terms of we were so right. I think about this all the time, going back to us talking how bad Trump would be before the election. It's we were so right. This has been not only has his administration been objectively awful, but all of the campaign promises that we screamed that he was lying about, he's broken. And so I do really believe that we have a really good shot to take both the House and the Senate. But we just have to keep our foot on the gas. I mean, in Georgia, when the midterms are coming up, I'm going to be up for 20 hours straight every day. You will see my face nonstop on the internet being vote for John Ossoff. That's a big Senate race right there.
Yeah, John Ossoff is a huge Senate race.
That's right.
I mean, on top of what you were saying right there, sorry, going back 1 second ago, what were you saying before that?
No, you're fine. You've gotten instantaneous. I know we were talking about
1 second ago, you were saying, I can't remember. Oh, all of the promises, all of the predictions that Democrats made. That's what I wanted to talk about. Kamala Harris said Project 2025 is going to happen. We are now about 50% of the way through that. Kamala Harris said Vladimir Putin is going to eat your lunch and roll through you. We've seen Vladimir Putin do that exactly. Kamala Harris also said, listen, when Trump places these tariffs on countries en masse, it's not going to work out well. He's going to cause economic destruction. And Trump realized that and had to back out of his tariffs almost immediately. He tacoed, he chickened out.
Yep.
So Kamala Harris and Democrats were so incredibly vindicated. Now, is there a lot of work we can do as a party? Of course.
Right.
We've got to communicate better. We've got to flesh some things out. New leaders need to rise to the top. I think some new faces need to rise to the top. But overall, when we made these predictions about the economy, about Russia, I even remember after the election, Trump supporters were trying to gaslight me in my comment section. They were trolling and they were saying, you called Trump a fascist. Look how wrong you are. Why would America ever elect a fascist? And then like 5 hours into being in office, Trump pardons every January 6er en masse and says, go do whatever you want. And it's like, sure, he's totally not authoritarian.
Right. Exactly. And we've talked a lot about it. So many of those January 6ers have insane criminal past. I was, as you were speaking, I was pulling up. To your point, I'm going to toot my own horn for a second. A video I posted about Project 2025, and this was January, February, March, April, May. This is June of 2024. And just, again, like, it actually infuriates me how many MAGA people I talk to who don't want to talk about this anymore. But I'm like, Project 2025 has played out to a T, a literal T. The entire idea was, expanding executive authority, this unitary executive theory, all these things. And Democrats were so right about it. To your point as well, I remember seeing the clip, and maybe you shared it with me. Joe Biden at his, I think that was his last State of the Union, saying, if they get the chance, they will take away your health care. They will sign a bill into law and cut health care. And at some point maybe I'll pull up that clip, but Joe Biden, when he was giving that address, got just relentlessly booed from the Republicans in Congress. Yeah. And then Trump ran this whole, it was a media storm of Republicans being like, how gross for him to ever suggest that we would cut Medicaid or cut Medicare. Trump was like, I promise I will never do this. And while Biden was getting booed on stage, he said, I'm telling the truth. You can send an email to my office. I'll send you their proposal. I promise you they're going to do it. And look at the bill that was just signed, right? And so it's like in all these different aspects, Democrats were right.
Democrats were right. When it comes to Epstein again, we were right about that. It's funny because Trump was like, I remember the MAGA supporters were like, we don't want to focus on Project 2025. That's a conspiracy theory. We're going to focus on Trump's strong suit, which is exposing the Epstein files. It's like, Jesus Christ.
I know. I can't believe. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about that. I don't want to. If there's more news that you wanted to talk about.
No, that was it. Let's talk about the Epstein.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about the Epstein. I'm going to toot my own horn. Do you mind if I play this TikTok?
Yeah, play
real quick? Yo, guys, check this out. So I posted this in June of 2024, and this was my explanation of Project 2025.
Hold it in the mic.
What's up? Oh, yeah, I know, yeah.
We're going to try to make this digestible because it's not a digestible thing. Everybody wants to talk about it, but it's hard to understand. It's like 900 plus pages endorsed by like 100 conservative groups, and it relies on something called unitary executive theory. I'm going to keep this very basic. Essentially, the next conservative president, they think, should be able to control the entire executive branch. And so it lays out a plan to do that. The executive branch includes the president and a bunch of three-letter agencies, right? And so the plan would be that Trump would get in office, or a conservative president would get in office, essentially sign an executive order that would allow him to fire certain federal officials. And then he'd be able to fire all of those people and hire people that he vets for loyalty. Because right now in the EPA, the Department of Justice, the FDA, they have very strict rules about not being political. Obviously, like the president will appoint the director of those agencies, but on a day-to-day basis, they're very much shielded from political influence. So like our, the way our system is set up can work in like a non-biased way. So when the FDA makes a ruling on abortion drugs, they can do so in a way that's like, hey, we're ruling purely on the basis that these drugs are safe and effective and nothing else, right? We don't want political influence. Trump would essentially hire a bunch of people to be loyalists in those positions, so they'd make decisions based on what Trump wants to do. And then he'd hire a bunch of federal judges also based on loyalty to make sure that, like, when laws are being broken, the federal judges care about being loyal.
That was going into
it to an absolute.
Yeah, that was going into appointing federal judges, not electing them. But yeah, to the point, exactly. The first thing he did, signs an executive order, mass fires a bunch of civil servants. Now the DOJ, the FBI, these are tools for political gain. They're much less independent than they previously were. So sorry, I had to toot my own horn there. Play that for a second. But getting into Epstein, if you'd like.
Yeah, let's talk about Epstein. First of all, next live stream, we're going to have a graphic where we can play videos, scroll through articles. That is going to be so fire, but we're just still building out the studio and the infrastructure. This is only episode 2. One more time, we have a members only show in about 15 minutes that we're going to go do. We're going to talk about some of our experiences in Chicago, talking to MAGA supporters at bars. We've multiple times almost gotten into fights with MAGA supporters, but we'll save this for the after show. We'll tell these stories publicly one time, but these are more fresh members only stories for now. But really quickly, let's talk about Epstein, because we've seen everything continue to escalate since we last talked. Pam Bondi, months ago, says the Epstein list is on my desk. Elon Musk, a few months later, says, listen, Trump is in the Epstein list. His name is on it. That's why he won't release it. Then all of a sudden, the list is completely gone. Now, we talked about whether or not Pam Bondi got overzealous, and I'm actually starting to lean towards this theory that Pam Bondi didn't actually have anything concrete on her desk. Yeah. She went out there, lied to the American people to try to hype up the fan base, but in doing so, she hoisted herself by her own petard. She basically shot herself in the foot and riled up the conspiracy base to such a degree that now they're turning on her, which is really, really funny.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. The question is, again, and we've talked about this before, is the idea that I guess Pam was overzealous. The DOJ, these people are completely incompetent too. You have to remember that he hires based on loyalty. So it's not like any of these individuals in any given criminal investigation know what the hell they're walking into, as opposed to maybe somebody else who would lead the DOJ, who would at least have some concept of how to run these agencies. But yeah, I mean, so does that mean that then through all of this, they were all lying? Like these files, they had never seen the files, or they knew some list didn't exist, and they were all just lying, and now they're getting burned for it? Is that the answer?
I think it's a little bit of that. Here's the thing. I think whatever information they want to release will not look good for Trump or the administration, but I also don't think they had the info that they thought they had.
Right.
They claimed they had this list. They were lying. I think the entire time, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, when they said they have this info, I think that they were lying.
Well, I think it goes back to, you want to talk about Elon Musk tweeting a million times a day. Mm-hmm. He literally didn't tweet, just last night that who do you say was on the? He's been tweeting all about the Epstein list.
Bannon.
Bannon's on the list.
Ironically, yeah.
So do we believe that what is Musk doing? Has Musk actually seen the files?
No, I think Musk is also messing around. When Musk sent out that tweet, I think he was trying to inflict maximum damage on Donald Trump. Did you watch the clip of me debating Posobiec yet?
I didn't.
There's a really funny clip that I want to show you.
Okay.
It's great. He gets completely rolled. I wish we could play it on screen, but it's a little bit hard right now. He starts trying to attack me personally because I make a great point about how he was used as a pawn to cover up sexual abuse. They brought They brought 7 influencers to the White House and gave them a bunch of binders. And Posobiec was one of the people holding those binders. And when he got into the thing, I think I told you this last time, He acted like he had no clue. So he was like, when I went to the White House, I was there for a different reason. They shoved a binder in my arms and they pushed me out the front door and they took a bunch of photos.
Such a lie.
All of us rolled our eyes.
Such a lie.
But then later on, he gets triggered at me. You guys in chat saw that, right? It was funny.
Yeah. I think you were telling me that he, you just kept asking him, why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? He's like, have you shaved? And it's dude, you're a grunt. And Jack, that dude's what? You know
what the comeback should have been? Of course, the guy defending Epstein wants me to shave to look younger.
That's right.
Of course, he wants me to look younger.
Right.
That would have cooked. That would have been so good. But you went on Piers Morgan one time. I remember you talked about the Georgia election slates. I remember this clip because I was like, damn, you cooked about the Georgia election, the fake slates of electors in Georgia. Let's talk about that. I know we're jumping around a bit, but I want to talk about the fake slates of electors because that is something that not enough people know about.
Yeah, dude, this is, again, when I'm on, I do it for fun now when I debate Trump supporters on TikTok. Sometimes I bring it back to stuff like this, or I talk a lot about, the realities of his indictments that, still pain me to this day that he has not seen any type of justice for those things.
He should be in jail.
Yeah, and now, there's so many, a million things we could list just from this administration.
The Qatari jet.
Yeah, the corruption, the absurdity. But yeah, the fake states of electors is something I often talk about. I'm like, well, Trump tried to overthrow an election. He didn't win. And people always, respond with, oh, January 6th was this, is this. I'm like, that's obviously one portion, but what about all the other illegal ways he tried to overthrow the election? The slates of electors were a big thing in multiple different states, sending these essentially fake slates of electors, these random people to certify to the Electoral College that Trump won. So in Georgia, obviously Joe Biden won the state of Georgia in 2020. And then this group of random people essentially show up to, I don't know if it's, I don't know exactly where they actually certified, somewhere in Fulton County. But they show up, these literally just random group of like Trump people. And they're just like, hey, we're here to certify that actually to the Electoral College that Georgia went to Trump. Here's our documentation proving it.
By the way, one of their goals, one of their ideas was to sleep in the Capitol overnight and actually pop up the next morning.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. And like, it's this random group of people. And in the indictment, you see like the pictures of the actual fake documentation they have. These fake documents.
Forged signatures.
Yeah, forged
fake
signatures
everything.
claiming that this is the certification that Trump won the state. And he did that in multiple states. Trump, we have, the audio phone calls of Trump on the phone with multiple other people and like 2,000 state officials spanning all these different swing states saying this is how you should go about accepting alternate slates of electors. It's like, wow, he tried every method, both legally and illegally, to stay in power because he cares more about himself than the American people.
At least it didn't culminate into a massive like Capitol riot. Oh wait, it didn't.
Yeah,
culminate
right,
into a massive-
exactly.
Because when I give the argument, I'm always like, listen, Trump tried to steal the election in 100 different ways before he finally did the January 6th raid. Honestly, I think misses the forest for the trees sometimes. Like when I go into these debates and people try to say, oh, this January 6er didn't actually breach the wall. I'm like, listen, I don't care about the individual January 6ers. I care about the pattern of events that happened leading up to the election.
Top down.
Trump said it was going to be stolen months before the election happened. On election night, he declares victory before the results are in. Mike Pence comes on stage after him and says, listen, we're still counting. I'm walking this back a little bit. It's not fully there. Then, after that, Donald Trump calls election officials state by state and tries to get them to, use fake slates of electors. Donald Trump tries to pressure Raffensperger. I'm pretty sure Trump's lawyer tries to threaten election officials. And then the phone call comes on the 2nd of January where he calls Raffensperger. He's like, listen, I need you to find votes. I need you to find X amount of votes.
That's right.
It needs to be done now. And then when Raffensperger says no, 4 days later, Trump sends his crowd to the Capitol based on the pretext that the election was already stolen. I always ask Trump supporters this question. If Trump never made up the election fraud lie, would January 6th have even happened in the first place? No, obviously not. It's all predicated on his election fraud
and
lie.
I think I've seen you actually on Piers Morgan, maybe a separate time, arguing this about, whether when Republicans try to compare some other event to, as an insurrection.
Yeah.
And again, missing the forest for the trees. No, but like the key here is that it's top down, right?
Yeah,
it was all top down. It was pushed by Trump, directly by Trump. And again, if only there was some giant report that everybody could read detailing the exact timeline of January 6th, and the first half of the report was going back 6 months about the lead up, how they planned it, all this testimony from all of Trump's closest people about what he was thinking and what he was doing and how he was leading this top-down movement. If only that existed in a bipartisan congressional report.
If any congressmen are listening, get on this. Make a report.
I have a paper copy of the January 6th report, and I pull it out all the time for the exact timeline. And it's like,
is that how you get girls? You're like, check out my January 6th report.
That's right. I'm like, yeah, look at this. No, but again, I tell that to Trump supporters all the time. Like, they're like, well, how do you know this happened? I'm like, well, if only there was, hundreds of hours of video testimony all laying this out. It's like, it's right here, It's wild. It's wild.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I end up memorizing the January 6th timeline to in my head. It's like he finishes speaking. The first Capitol perimeter is breached at 1 p.m. or 1:01. He finishes speaking at 1:10. He arrives home at the White House at 1:18 or 1:19, where he's immediately informed of the violence at the Capitol, and then he spends 187 minutes, I think, essentially saying completely nothing and saying nothing about it. At one point, sending a tweet, saying Mike Pence doesn't have the courage. We have all the information through that time of how people in the White House were handing him notes about what to tweet. Hey, you could tweet this, you could tweet this. Well, they were actually handing it to his then chief of staff because Trump was nowhere to be found. He had locked himself into a room. We have testimony of a conversation that happened when his chief of staff saw Trump, who was like one of the only people to see him that day, where his chief of staff came back to the White House and everybody said, what the hell is Trump doing? Why is he not calling this how he sees it? Why is he not calling for the violence to end? And the chief of staff says essentially he doesn't want to. We have text from so many different elected officials. Marjorie Taylor Greene, we have subpoena text messages saying Trump needs to get control of this. As she says today, was peaceful. Oh, they're shooting at the Capitol. Like, please tell them to get control of this. We have subpoena text messages from Tucker Carlson, from Barry Loudermilk. Like, this is so extensive. And the fact that people still act like it wasn't a top-down effort, or that any of these people who say January 6th was a peaceful day are telling the truth, is absolutely absurd. By the way, I love seeing all your comments. It really means the world how kind you guys are. You guys are the best. Melissa, thank you so much for the kind words. And if you're in here, drop a heart emoji. I think
drop a blue heart in the comment section. I have some good news and some bad news again.
Okay.
Some bad news, we're coming up on an hour, so we're going to switch over and do some members-only chatting for a bit. Some good news, you can find so much more of Chris across all platforms. Look up Chris Mowry, M-O-W-R-E-Y.
There's a D.
Chris D.
Sorry.
Mowry. Never forget the D. You know, Daniel says in chat, $20. Thank you so much, Daniel. I appreciate that more than you know. We'll see you guys in the members-only chat after. Be there on Friday. Be there or be square. We'll see you then.
Thanks, guys.
Peace out.
Appreciate the stream. Did it end on my side? Did it end on all?